And welcome back to the NFLNU podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar, and we have a pretty big show planned today. We got like 15 games to preview and whatnot. Pretty big week 14 in the NFL. A lot of big games on Sunday that could sway playoff chances and maybe decide a couple divisions, especially on Monday Night Football this week. But yeah, we got a big show to get to. And you know what? If we're going to hype up a big show, why don't we just get the bad stuff out of the way up front? Let's talk Thursday Night Football, because that was a dumpster fire last night. Oh my goodness. Dallas Cowboys at Chicago Bears. Chicago wins 31-24. Chicago improves to 7-6, and look out, people. They've won 3 straight and are looking a little different. They're looking a little different. Cowboys fall to 6-7, and they've lost 3 straight and are looking about as bad as you can look right now. So, you look at the score if you didn't watch the game. Don't beat yourself up. Please don't. You look at the score and you see, oh, 31-24. That looks like a close game. Wow, must have came down to the wire. You could have not been more wrong. This is another one of those instances of the score not indicating what the game really was. Because the game started out great for Dallas, just like the Thanksgiving game. They had the longest drive of any team this entire season. They had a 17-play, like an 8.5-minute long touchdown drive capped off by an Elliott touchdown. And all of a sudden the Cowboys are feeling really good about themselves. They're like, yeah, we're great. And then everything went straight to hell. It was like the Thanksgiving game all over again for Dallas. Because after that touchdown drive by Dallas, the Bears then score 24 unanswered points. That's gotta sting. And you know what's really bad? They made Mitchell Trubisky look like a football god last night. That was wow. Mitchell Trubisky undoubtedly had his best game of the year, and it's not even close. He was flat out balling. All joking aside, I've been hard on Trubisky all year long. He flat out balled out last night. Went 23 of 31, 244 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, had a terrible interception early in the first quarter, 2 sacks. But here's the real difference maker in my opinion. 10 rushes for 63 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. They got him more involved in the run game. He was their second leading rusher last night behind Montgomery. And I think it really made a difference for that Bears offense. I really felt like it opened things up. And on that last touchdown scramble, it was like early in the fourth quarter, he was just breaking arm tackles. He looked great. I mean, Trubisky looked phenomenal last night. 2 of those passing touchdowns went to Allen Robinson. I cannot understate enough how well Trubisky played. And you know what? He's starting to string together some good games now. Look out for Chicago. So I really think if he plays like this, or at least almost a fraction of like this, he gives the Bears a much better chance to win. Think about it. If this kind of Trubisky had shown up in at least 2 to 3 other games this year, the Bears could seriously be like a 9-win team right now. They really could. If this Trubisky had shown up against the Eagles, they would have won that game. If this Trubisky had shown up on opening night, they would have won that game. It shows you that there are flashes and that there really is something there. That it's not always bad. And he undoubtedly had his best game of this year, and I'm going to be honest, this might be one of Trubisky's better games since he's come into the league. He really played that good. He flat out outdueled Dak Prescott in every facet. The Cowboys apparently had the number 1 offense coming into this game. Sure didn't play like it. A lot of 3-and-outs last night. Their offensive line couldn't block anybody. Receivers were struggling to get open. And Dak Prescott was just not doing well. He really hasn't done well the last couple of games. But I think the main crux of the problem last night was their defense. It just felt like they gave up. You sit there and watch that game, you cannot convince me that team didn't give up about halfway through. Saw it was going south and just stopped trying. Because that's what it looked like. Team just flat out quitting out there. In a game they absolutely needed. But now they're 6-7. It was weird because it was almost a carbon copy of the game that happened on Thanksgiving for the Cowboys against the Bills. But in retrospect, this game against the Bears was a perfect microcosm of what the Cowboys season has been. You know, they had that really great start on that opening drive, just like how they started out 3-0, and then everything went straight to hell, like how they've done this entire season after that great start, how they've now gone, 3-6 since that 3-0 start? So that's great. Yeah, that's great. So here's what I'm saying. Bears are looking really good right now. They look like a different team. Granted, they just beat up the Lions and the Cowboys. Not exactly world beaters, but they're looking a lot better. They are. We have to give them credit for that. Bears have won 3 out of the last 4. They're looking really good. And suddenly, all of a sudden, because the Cowboys are so bad, the Bears are back in the wild card hunt, people. They're 7-6. I think they're a game behind the Rams right now at 7-5. If a couple things break their way, now the Bears have a really tough schedule. They have the Chiefs and the Vikings left on their schedule. I can't remember the other team that's on there, but they have a really tough schedule remaining. If a couple things break the Bears' way and Trubisky keeps playing like this, look out. Chicago might make a late season run. After everything that's happened, they might make a late season run. Now, that's the good news out of the last night's game. The bad news is the Cowboys need to fire everybody. Like right now. Jason Garrett needs to be fired. That entire coaching staff needs to be fired. Because there was no effort. There was no urgency. There was a lack of everything. If you watch last night's game, you would not be able to tell that this Cowboys team desperately needed a win to keep division hopes alive. You would not be able to tell that. The Bears played like they, had some urgency, and you know what? It worked. Cowboys didn't. Sky is literally falling, and they act like they don't care. It is the craziest thing. And like I said, it's gotten so bad. Don't just fire Jason Garrett, the head coach. Fire that entire coaching staff. It's gotten that bad. Also, Brett Maher, the kicker, I really don't know why they still employ this kicker. Coming into Thursday Night Football, Brett Maher led the league in missed field goals at 9. You're thinking, 9's not that much. Well, when you look around the rest of the league, the next closest guy has missed 6. So 9 is a pretty big margin. Then he comes out in the first half, shanks another one, a 42-yard field goal. He now currently leads the league at 10 missed field goals. And you know what? NFL Research, which is a Twitter page, did some digging during the game. Brett Maher has now missed the most kicks, most field goals by any kicker in the last 4 NFL seasons. Think about that. The Cowboys still have, 3 games left to play? And Brett Maher is having one of the worst field goal seasons by any kicker in 4 years. And he's still probably going to be out there kicking next Sunday because the Cowboys are that stubborn. It's just a lot's going wrong with this team right now. I promised myself I wouldn't rant, but here I am ranting. It's funny how that works out. It's weird. I don't... The NFC East is so bad. I'm starting to become convinced that the Cowboys are going to lose out the rest of the year and still somehow win the NFC East. That division is that bad. Oh my gosh, it's so trash. So, I promised myself I wouldn't rant, and we're not gonna. But, like I said, fire everybody. It's that bad for Dallas. And Chicago's still alive in the wild card hunt. Who would have guessed that one? As long as Trubisky starts playing as well as he did last night, and I promise you, if you didn't watch it, he played great. Good for Mitchell Trubisky. Once again, the Bears win this one 31-24, and we're moving on to previews. Yippee! So, we got a full slate of games because no team is on bye weeks anymore. We're officially done with that stuff, so everybody's playing this weekend. Yay! So, like we did last week, let's start off with the biggest game at 1 o'clock Eastern. Sound fair? Sound fair to me. You got the 10-2 San Francisco 49ers staying on the road, continuing their road trip, going to the 10-2 New Orleans Saints, who have won 3 straight and are currently the number 1 seed in the NFC right now. This is going to be a big time game. So the last time we saw the 49ers, they came off of I don't want to say it was a heartbreaking loss. It was a tough loss to the Ravens. They really left their heart and soul out there on the field and really hung in there with the best team in the NFL and showed how good they were. Now they're going to the team that currently holds the same spot that the 49ers had a week ago before they dropped all the way to the wild card. So you're thinking, okay, the Saints are really good. They're 10-2 and they have the number 1 seed. Well, I think the Saints are really good. Don't get me wrong. I think they're good. But I don't think they're great. They're right below that upper echelon of teams. Like the 49ers and Ravens are way up there on a pedestal, and the Saints are just slightly below that. I think the Saints occupy a nice little secondary tier of really good, but not really great. If you look at all their stats and figures, those stats and figures say, they're a well above average team, and even good in some categories, but they pale in comparison to a team like San Francisco or Baltimore, which kind of proves my point that they're really good but not great, which is why I think this game is a really great litmus test for both of these teams in certain regards. You have the 49ers who have the best defense in the NFL, in my opinion. They're number 1 in total defense, giving up 250.9 yards per game. They're second in sacks, getting 45 on the entire year. Number 2 in points per game, giving up an average of 15.3. And they held Baltimore, the high-scoring Ravens, to their lowest point total of the entire season at 20. So what I'm saying is the Ravens are really good, but the 49ers are also really, really good. But like I just said, I think it's a really big litmus test in a lot of ways. So let's look at the 49ers first. This is a litmus test for them because let's say, they don't win their division. They win 12 games, but Seattle somehow, finds a way to win their division. So that would mean San Francisco's the wild card. If San Francisco ends up staying in the wild card spot where it is currently at right now, if that is to happen, they would have to go to a New Orleans in the playoffs. Potentially, if they were matched up, they would have to go to New Orleans. So, if they play now in Week 14, this would be a really good litmus test. Get some, I don't want to say practice in, but it gets some experience in a big game situation against a good New Orleans team. That way, if you have to come back there in January, you're prepared. You know what it's like because you were literally there a month ago. So, in that regard, it's a good litmus test in case San Francisco gets the wild card. For New Orleans, I think it's a really good litmus test because I think San Francisco is the best team New Orleans has played the entire season. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we'll see if New Orleans can really hang with one of the bigger dogs in the yard because New Orleans' only losses have come to, if I remember correctly, it was the Rams in Week 2 when Drew Brees jacked up his thumb. And then there was that fluky loss to the Falcons. Those are the only teams that have beaten the Saints. They've beaten everybody else. But I'm just saying this 49ers team is really good, and it'll be a really great test to see how good the Saints are. If they get blown out, then you have your answer. But I think it'll be close in the fourth quarter. I really do. But I've ridden the 49ers train all season long, and I'm going to continue to do it here. I'm going to take the 49ers to win a close one in New Orleans. I think they go in there and beat the team that is currently in the number 1 seed. And, if a couple things break the 49ers' way, they'll be back in that position at the end of the weekend. So I'm taking the 49ers to win this one, but it's going to be a fun one. Just like last week with Baltimore and San Fran, this one's going to be fun too. And we're moving on to our next game. We're going to stay in the NFC South, though. A very interesting one brewing in the NFC South. You got the 5-7 Carolina Panthers going on the road to take on the 3-9 Atlanta Falcons. This one's interesting for a lot of reasons. Let's start first with what happened on Tuesday. Because on Tuesday's show, I said that the Panthers felt like they were about to make a coaching change, that they at the end of the season they would probably make wholesale changes. And as soon as I finished recording, as soon as I finished editing the video and hit upload, got it all uploaded, that's when I got the notification on my phone that the Panthers had fired head coach Ron Rivera. I literally threw up my arms like, come on, man. So, they move on from Ron Rivera, who is a great coach, but the results just weren't there this year. They lost to Washington. You really can't do that. So, Perry Fewell, I know I'm butchering that name, who was the defensive backs coach, has been promoted to the head coach. So, the question becomes, how will the Carolina Panthers look this Sunday? Because the last time we saw them, they did not look very good at all. A lot of questions around this Carolina team. You know, with Ron Rivera gone, how are they going to look? Or is their defense still going to be struggling out there to stop the run? Yada, yada, yada. But I think a new plot line has developed this week in that if Kyle Allen is continuing to struggle, which, he didn't play well last week, and he hasn't played bad, but he also hasn't played good either. It's that weird little middle ground of, he's not great, not even good, but not terrible. So the plot line that I saw develop earlier in the week was, if Kyle Allen struggles again, do we see rookie quarterback Will Grier from West Virginia University? Which is, wow. We went from Kyle Allen is going to take Cam Newton's job to Will Grier maybe taking Kyle Allen's job. What a turn of events is going on in Carolina right now. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. If Kyle Allen goes out there and gets sacked 7 times and throws 3 interceptions in this one against a not good Falcons team, maybe we see Will Grier late in this one. But the one thing Carolina has succeeded at this year, the one silver lining is their pass rush has been really good. They currently lead the league with 46 sacks. And the last time we saw the Atlanta Falcons was on Thanksgiving, late Thanksgiving night. And if you remember what happened in that game, Matt Ryan got sacked 9 times. Oh, that just makes me shudder to think of. Oh. So, protect Matt Ryan at all costs and try to keep the sacks to like 5. And I think the Falcons will be improved. Oh. The odd thing about these teams is, neither team really has anything left to play for but pride. Carolina's out of the playoff hunt. They just fired their head coach, and, Dan Quinn's been a dead man walking as a head coach for a while. Neither team really has much to play for other than pride, but the last time these two teams met, Atlanta blew the doors off Carolina in Carolina. So maybe Carolina can go to Atlanta and exact some revenge. I really don't feel good about either one of these teams right now at all. But I think I'm going to take the Panthers to win. I think. I haven't trusted Atlanta all year long. And the one time I did, they ended their winning streak. So I'm going to take the Panthers. I don't feel good about it, but I guess Perry Fewell, I know I'm butchering that name, can lead his team to a win over the moribund Atlanta Falcons. And we're moving on. Let's go to the AFC North, people. Nice little divisional rivalry. All right, get this. You got the 1-11 Cincinnati Bengals feeling great about their win. Yeah, they got one, people. They're not terrible. They got a win. Going to Cleveland to take on the 5-7 Browns. Kind of an odd game in a lot of ways. Because the Bengals have been a much more competitive team these last couple weeks. Now, I don't know necessarily if it's because solely that they're playing better. I do know that other teams have been overlooking them lately, and maybe that's mostly what it is. But the Bengals have been playing better. Just ask the Raiders and Steelers. Those were close, gritty games that the Bengals almost had in a lot of ways. But they played the Jets, and that was a one-sided beatdown of the Jets. That really was for the Bengals. They're still not a good team, though. Let me say that. I know they're playing better. The Bengals still aren't a good team. All their numbers and figures and stats say that they're, at best, one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL. But they're playing slightly better. So, it's not... The Browns just can't come in and expect, to walk into an easy win. That's what the Jets did, and the Jets lost 22-6. You know what I'm saying? But the problem for the Browns is, they had that 3-game winning streak, and it felt like they were figuring things out. And then everything just went straight downhill. The bad Browns that we had seen all year long reemerged and let all the air out of the balloon, and now it's just laying there on the ground. So I don't know what we're going to see from Cleveland this week. I had really thought that they were starting to piece things together and really figure things out, and then everything just went away. And the bad Browns came back, and everybody hates the bad Browns. Bad Browns are bad. They're unwatchable. But I do think that the bad Browns are still slightly better than the Bengals that we've seen all season long, which isn't saying a lot. And plus, it's in Cleveland. I don't know. It's an odd game. I'd really not... It's just like the last one. I'm not high up on either of these teams right now. But here's a question I'll pose to you. Can the Cincinnati Bengals do the impossible? Can they, in this horrific 2019 season that they have had, do the impossible and get a win streak going? If they do, I'll make you a promise, Cincinnati. I'll make you this promise. If you beat Cleveland and you win 2 straight, I will no longer say that the Cincinnati Bengals are toothless, like I've been saying all season long. I'll say you got some teeth if you win this game. I don't think they do, though. I'm taking Cleveland to win. I think the bad Browns are still slightly better than the Bengals. It's going to be a low-scoring, sloppy game. I think I can guarantee that. I wouldn't be stunned if the final score is like 19-13. It's just a field goal bonanza in Cleveland. That's just what it feels like. Once again, I got Cleveland winning. And we're moving on to another great game. This time, it's the NFC East, people. More like the NFC least. Haha. Please laugh at my jokes. All right, we got the 3-9 Washington football team. They've won 2 straight and are somehow still alive in the division. Going to Green Bay to take on the 9-3 Packers. This feels like a beatdown written all over it. But for the Packers, people talk about the Packers like they're one of the best teams in the NFL. And if you just look at their record, you would assume so. Yeah, they're 9-3, so they have to be one of the best. You look at all their stats and numbers, it paints an entirely different picture. I'm going to rattle off some numbers, all right? So stay with me here. They're 28th in total defense, giving up an average of 376.8 yards per game. They're 22nd in pass defense with 253.8 pass yards per game. And 25th in rush defense, giving up an average of 123 rush yards per game. And you're thinking, okay, that's just on defense. Some teams are just bad on defense. Well, their offensive numbers also aren't that great. They're 22nd in total offense, averaging 340 yards per game. 22nd. So that's saying that they are not just, that's saying that they're not average. They're well below average. And in a lot of these defensive numbers, that's bottom third of the league. That's really bad. And I know that their defensive hallmark is like they get turnovers and they get sacks, but I mean, at some point, these numbers are going to come back to haunt the Packers, in my opinion. Now, I know that the numbers can't account for something like Aaron Rodgers just showing up and dropping 4 touchdowns like he did against the Giants and then going cold for 2 weeks. I know that's more what it's really about, but I just think it's important that we start to mention that, everybody talks about the Packers like, oh, they're a really good team. They're 9-3. Not really. I mean, yeah, they're 9-3, but what they've done with that 9-3 record really has not been good. And you know what? I would like to specifically, if I could talk, point out their rush defense. Like I just said, they're 25th in rush defense, giving up 123 rush yards per game. Now, if you remember last week, who Washington played? They played the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers have technically, in terms of stats and figures, they have a worse rush defense than Green Bay. But we saw what Washington did to that rush defense. They tore him up for over 200 rushing yards between two guys. Darius Geis had 2 touchdowns and like 130 yards, and Adrian Peterson had almost 100 rushing yards. So I'm going to argue that maybe this could be a recipe for a similar upset for the Washington football team. That if they can find a way to get that run game going, because we know it's not going to come from the pass. They have no passing game with Dwayne Haskins right now. That maybe that could keep them alive in this game. And for Green Bay, it's simple. You just got to stack the box and force them to throw. Force Dwayne Haskins to beat you. That is simply how you beat this Washington team. Take the run game away from them. And if you can't do that, then I don't know what to tell you, Green Bay. I'm going to take Green Bay to win. And I think that should... Wait, hang on. I don't think it'll put... When I wrote this preview piece, I said, I have it right here in my notes, that if Green Bay wins, it should put to bed the idea that Washington can still win the NFC East. Because they can, mathematically. But that was before the Thursday night game, before Dallas got embarrassed. And I think that maybe even with a loss, Washington is still alive. I think maybe mathematically, I'm not sure. That in some way, shape, or form, a 3-10 team would still be alive. Oh, God, the NFC East is so bad. Once again, I'm taking Green Bay to win it, but just keep an eye on that rush game from Washington. Just keep an eye on it. Green Bay has struggled to stop running teams all year long. Just keep an eye on it. Let's stay in the NFC North. You got the 8-1 Detroit Lions, who have lost 5 straight. Yeah. Sexy, I know. Going to Minnesota to take on the 8-4 Vikings, who are coming off that tough loss on Monday Night Football. So, for the Lions, last time we saw them was Thanksgiving, when David Blau set the world on fire. Oh, he was so beautiful. Well, he's still the starting quarterback. Yay, I still have my David Blau for MVP shirts everywhere. They're beautiful. So, I'll ask this question. Can David Blau set the world on fire again, this time on an NFL Sunday? This time he has, a full week to... Well, he's had a week and a half at this point, because, he last played on Thanksgiving. So he's had, time to prepare, time to actually study, time to actually work out and get it in a proper regimen. Unlike what he had to go through on Thanksgiving. That's the main headline for the Lions is, David Blau is going to be their starting quarterback again. Other than that, they're just trying to win a football game at this point. But I think most of the headlines about this game are concerning the Minnesota Vikings. I think the biggest headline is Dalvin Cook, who had that shoulder injury on Monday Night Football, and he had to leave the game. He didn't return. And he says he should be good to go for this game, but, you hear shoulder injury with the running back, and that's never a good thing. So, we'll see if he can play or not. But if he can't, the rookie Alex Madden, Mattinson, Madison, probably butchering that one too, could see a large workload increase. Even if Dalvin Cook plays, maybe keep him on a pitch count, Don't push him too hard. So, but if he can't go, Madison, I have to really think about it when I say it. That's sad. could be, the starting running back in this game. And, he's shown some really bright spots this year, so I don't think the Vikings would be hurting too much if Alex has to go in and play. But I think a major point of emphasis for this game is the Vikings defense. They need to show me something in this game. Because, it's the hallmark of their head coach, Mike Zimmer, that he's a defensive guy, and that's how the Vikings have won over the years, is they got a tough defense. And this year it really hasn't been there. In all honesty, even on Monday night, they gave up over 400 yards, for crying out loud, to Russell Wilson. I'm not saying, Russell Wilson's a bad quarterback because he's one of the best in the NFL, but, my God, if you're supposed to be a good defense, that's not supposed to happen. So they need to show me something. And if David Blau and Bo Scarborough, who is their current starting running back, go out there and tear up your defense, then Minnesota, we need to have a come-to-Jesus meeting here in December. Because that is not good. That is very, very bad. I'm taking the Vikings to win, and this should be a nice bounce-back win. But I really think it's worth keeping an eye on that defense and watching how they perform and if they can, keep David Blau and that offense in check because, we saw it on Thanksgiving. They can still be effective down the field. Now, granted, Kenny Golladay has to be left entirely wide open with a guy not covering him within 20 yards for it to work, but it shows you that they can still strike. They can still hit you with a 60-yard touchdown pass. So they're not a walkover. Don't take them lightly, but just go out there, do your business, and show me something, defense. Show me that you deserve to win the NFC North. Go out there and bully the Lions. It's not that hard, I promise. Once again, I got the Vikings to win. And we're moving on to, oh my goodness, people. Look what it is. It's the Adam Gase Bowl Part 2. You got the 3-9 Miami Dolphins going to New York to take on the 4-8 New York Jets. Oh boy, the Adam Gase Bowl is back. This time more Gasey. Ah, you like that? Yeah, I know. So creative. So, these two teams are coming off opposite ends of the spectrum. You got the Jets, who are obviously coming off their most horrific loss of the season. Arguably, because, they lost to the Bengals. And then you got the Dolphins, who are coming off that great second-half comeback win over the Eagles last week. And, these two teams, their records are terrible, but, they have just different feels about them. Around the Jets, it just kind of feels doom and gloom. But with the Dolphins, despite their 3 wins, they're feeling sunshine and rainbows right about now. They're just having fun. And they have a great chance to do it again. For this game, though, I think the biggest point of emphasis, and it's been a problem all year long for the Jets, they need to find a quick fix for their offensive line. I'm not sure what it is that they need to do. Maybe leave the running back in there for most of the game to help block. I don't know. But you can't have another instance. I really can't talk today. Instance where Sam Darnold is, under pressure the entire game. You can't. Because that's what happened against Cincinnati, and you got bullied in that game because of it. Are you going to let it happen again against this terrible Dolphins team and their terrible defense? Are you going to let Taco Charlton run all over your offensive line? Come on, Jets, talk to me here. Give Sam Darnold protection, and he has shown you when you protect him, he can tear up defenses, and he has that in him. You just got to give the kid a chance. And the Jets, surprisingly, according to stats and figures, they have a good total defense. Their total defense ranks in the top 10, if I remember correctly. So, there's at least that for the Jets. But this Miami team has proven to be frisky. I can't quantify it, I can't put it in numbers, and I can't really describe it. They're just frisky. They're almost plucky in a sense. That they shouldn't be in these games. Ryan Fitzpatrick shouldn't be throwing for 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards on the Eagles, but he's doing it. He shouldn't be out here rushing for touchdowns. I think he's got like 5 rushing touchdowns on the year, for crying out loud. They shouldn't be doing this, but they're doing it. And it's fun to watch. They've proven to be frisky, and the Jets have experienced that firsthand. Remember the last time these two teams played? It was I think it was over a month ago in Miami, where the Dolphins embarrassed the Jets in a one-sided beatdown to get their first win of the year. And it started to feel like Adam Gase was starting to lose his job. Now you fast forward, and things are slightly different. The Jets had a nice little 3-game run there. Then they let all the air out of the balloon. And the Dolphins got some wins. But it all started back in Gase Bowl Part 1, where they got their first. So it is, in a matchup of bad teams in New York, it is definitely in the realm of possibilities that the Dolphins could win again. And you know what? That's what I'm going with. I'm going with frisky. I'm going with plucky. And I'm calling for the Dolphins to get their 4th win of the year in New York. I had forgotten I picked them until I looked at my notes just now. I had really forgotten. I'm taking the Dolphins to win. I think either team could really win this one. It's a matchup of bad teams. It's probably going to be sloppy. I'm expecting weather to not be the greatest in New York again. But, anything's possible. But give me plucky Fitzmagic Dolphins. And sounds like fun to me. And we're moving on. Let's go to the South. Let's go to the AFC South for this one. Nice little AFC matchup here. All right, you got the 4-8 Denver Broncos going on the road. They just had that great last-second win against the Chargers in Drew Lock's first game, so they're feeling good about themselves. Going to Houston to take on the 8-4 Texans, who have won 2 straight and are coming off that great Sunday Night Football win over the Pats. And you know what? Speaking of that game showed you how good the Texans can be. Games like that in the past, Texans have typically not shown up and get embarrassed. That's been my opinion of them for most of my life, that in a big-time game against a team with a good record, Houston doesn't show up. But they did last week. And they showed up in grand fashion. Deshaun Watson had, 4 touchdowns in that one? He looked great. And, Houston's offense has been good for most of the year. They've been hot and cold at points, but for the majority, they've been good, in my opinion. 9th in total offense with 372.8 yards per game. They score a fair amount of points, and they're looking really good. And, the Denver Broncos defense still says that they're good statistically. I will not buy into that fact, but I will say, even if the Broncos defense is good, and even if their points per game is low, so was the Patriots, and Deshaun Watson made that defense look stupid. So, if you want to die on the hill and say the Broncos defense is good, okay, so was the Pats, and Deshaun Watson had no problem with that. For the Broncos offense, I have a feeling that, they're going to have to put up points in this one. That unless they're getting to Deshaun Watson and sacking him 7 times in this game, they're going to have to find a way to put up points, and I just don't really buy into Drew Lock going out there and throwing 3 touchdowns in his second game. I'm not saying he's bad, I'm just saying it's a really, really tough ask to go from, hey, I know your first game was last week, I need you to go out there and basically go shot for shot with Deshaun Watson in your second game, and it's on the road. It's a tall ask. It's a very tall ask. I'm taking Houston to win. It seems like a very straight, cut and dry game from this one. Might be low scoring. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 24-17. Maybe Drew Lock throws a touchdown or 2, but, I think Houston's a good team. I think they're a good team, but they have a really tough fight on their hand in the AFC South. It's probably going to come down to the last week in that division. Now, I know we just talked about the Gase Bowl Part 2. We got another bowl this week in the NFL. It's the Bruce Arians Bowl Part 2. You know why? Because the 6-6 Indianapolis Colts, who have lost 2 straight, are going to Tampa Bay to take on the 5-7 Buccaneers, who have won 2 straight. Now, it's the Arians Bowl Part 2 because Bruce Arians, the current head coach at Tampa Bay, he played his former team, the Arizona Cardinals, a couple weeks ago in Tampa Bay and won. Now he's playing another one of his former teams, the Colts, in Tampa Bay. Think back to, what was it, 2012, 2011? When then head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, Chuck Pagano, was diagnosed with cancer, had to step away from the team. Bruce Arians was named the interim head coach, and they went on a magical run. If I remember correctly, they won their division that year. They had that rallying cry of Chuck Strong, and after that, Bruce Arians got hired as the Cardinals head coach, and the rest was history. Well, now, fast forward a couple of years, Arians is in Tampa Bay, and here comes his former team. So, let's talk about the game. Despite their bad record, Tampa Bay has one of the best offenses in the NFL. Surprisingly. Number 5 in total offense with 380.4 yards per game, averaging 28.3 points per game. That's 4th best in the NFL. Think about that. On what the stats are telling you is Tampa Bay has one of the best offenses in the NFL. Not just one of the best, they're a top 5 offense, believe it or not. But there is a catch that comes with that. Yeah, they're one of the 5 best offenses, but Jameis Winston is a turnover machine, and I know we've talked about it a lot, but we've talked about it a lot because it's important. Since Jameis Winston came into the league, he has led the league in turnovers. He has if I remember correctly, the exact number was about 101 turnovers since 2015 when he came into the league. That's the most since then. You know who the second closest is? It's Phillip Rivers with 82. Think about that. Jameis Winston basically has a 20 turnover margin over Phillip Rivers. Think about that. He also leads the league. Winston also leads the league in turnovers this year with 25 or 23. It's in the low 20s, I remember correctly. So, he's good for at least, 1 to 2 turnovers a game is what I'm getting at. Despite the fact that their offense is so high-flying and high-scoring. So what I'm saying is that you're almost getting a guarantee that he's going to turn the ball over once or twice in this game. Even with their high-flying offense, they're going to turn the ball over. But the problem is that this Colts team, they just don't got the weapons right now. They're just too banged up. T.Y. Hilton's still out. Marlon Mack's still out. It's just a lot to overcome for them. So even if they get the turnovers, and, let's say Jameis Winston turns the ball over 2 to 3 times in this game. I just don't believe the Colts have the firepower right now to capitalize off those turnovers. I mean, they're just too banged up. I mean, you can't expect them to go shot for shot with Tampa Bay with Zach Pascal as their number 1 wide receiver. No disrespect to Zach Pascal, but you're going up against a wide receiver core in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who are both over 1,000 yards on their own and have multiple touchdowns on the year. I mean, you're asking these guys to go up against an offense that's plainly better than them. And that's why I'm taking Tampa Bay to win. I just think the Colts are just way too banged up, and I just can't expect that offense to go out there and go shot for shot with what Tampa Bay has. Even though Tampa Bay does not have a good defense. They don't. Especially their pass defense. But, the Colts offense is dried up, and I mainly think it's because of the injuries. No T.Y. Hilton, no Eric Ebron, no Marlon Mack. These guys are all gone right now. So, that's why I'm taking Tampa Bay to win. And we're moving on to the last of our early games. But it's a big one. That's why I saved it for last. You got the 10-2 Baltimore Ravens, who have won 8 straight, franchise record, 8 straight. Going to Buffalo to take on the 9-3 Bills, who have won 3 straight, people. Ooh, this is going to be a big game. This is undoubtedly the toughest opponent Buffalo has played this season. They played New England, they played Dallas, and they played Philly, but the Ravens are a whole different animal. The Ravens are the best team in the NFL for a reason. But this game it kind of boils down to a classic tale in the NFL. It's going to be a great offense versus a good defense. That's what we're getting this Sunday. Because, we've talked about it to death on this podcast, how good the Ravens offense is. They're number 2 in total offense with 420.8 yards per game. They're number 1 in rush offense, averaging over 207.8 rush yards per game, and number 1 in points per game, scoring 33.8 points per game. Really good is what I'm getting at. In contrast, the Bills have the number 3 total defense, giving up an average of 300.1 yards per game, number 3 in pass defense with 195.8 pass yards per game, and number 3 in points per game, giving up an average of 15.7 points per game. So, really good offense, really good defense. Throw them together in Buffalo. Let's see what we get. These last couple weeks, the Bills have been playing their best football. They've had a couple blowout wins over some bad teams, and they had that big Thanksgiving win over a bad Cowboys team. Now they're playing the biggest dog in the entire yard, and we're going to see how good the Bills really are. Speaking to what's happened these last couple weeks, the Ravens last week in Baltimore showed that they can win a low-scoring, gritty game where not a lot's going right, where the weather's impacting them. I think that was important because, you go into Buffalo, this game's probably going to be low-scoring in my opinion. That was important for the Ravens to show that they could do that. It was also important for the rest of the NFL to see that the Ravens can be slowed down to a certain degree if a couple things break your way. I mean, the 49ers held the Ravens to a season low 20 points. So it's possible, in theory. For Buffalo, though, here's what I'm going to say. I will not pick you to win, Buffalo. I'm taking the Ravens because I've just ridden them all season long and they're awesome. But what I will say is, if you can keep this a close game in the fourth quarter, if we're 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter and it is not a blowout, I'll consider that a win, Buffalo. I really will. I will not knock you for losing to the Ravens. I will not do that to any team because the Ravens are making everybody look stupid. But, show us you can hang with the big dog. Show us what you got, Buffalo. If we're halfway through the fourth quarter, here, I'll even throw you this. If we're going into the fourth quarter and it's not a blowout, I'll consider it a win for the Bills. I'll throw you a bone. If we're going into the fourth quarter, not a blowout, that's a win for Buffalo. I'll throw you a bone. But once again, I'm taking the Ravens to win. And we're moving on to the first of our late afternoon games. Here we go. You got the 4-8 Los Angeles Chargers, who have lost 3 straight, going to Jacksonville to take on the 4-8 Jags, who have lost 4 straight. So at least there's that. The Chargers have quietly been having a good year on defense despite their record. They're number 4 in total D, giving up an average of 309.3 yards per game. And they're 11th in points per game that they give up. They're 11th best, giving up an average of 20.1 points per game. So that's pretty good. Chargers are having a good year on defense. But despite that, we talked about it on Tuesday's recap show. Phillip Rivers has struggled lately. He's had 8 combined interceptions the last 3 weeks. That's the most over a 3-game span his entire career. And that's part of the reason why there was talk that he could have been benched for Tyrod Taylor in their last game. So if Phillip Rivers comes out and he really struggles in this one against the, at best, on their best day, average Jacksonville Jaguars defense, maybe we could see Tyrod Taylor coming up soon. I like Phillip Rivers. I really do. I'm just saying, if you struggle against this not good defense, then I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Speaking of the Jags for a second, Gardner Minshew is back in the lineup. He's been named the starter for their season going forward. Because Nick Foles, in all brutal honesty, wasn't doing anything for him. That offense looked limp. It looked stale. And now Minshew's in there. And we'll see what he can do. I think what the Jags need to do, they need to find a way to get Leonard Fournette going, because I feel like that's when they've been at their best, when Leonard Fournette has a big role in their offense, when he's rushing for over 100 yards. He's had a couple of them this year. That's when I feel like the Jags were at their best, when he can help take the pressure off the quarterback, and the quarterback's not having to do everything. But I'm going to be honest. I'm taking the Chargers to win this one. I think their defense is good, and I think Phillip Rivers will find a way to just luck into 17 or 20 points, because I just don't see a high-scoring game in this one. I really don't. It's probably going to be just like I've already said, it's probably going to be a low-scoring game. And I'm taking the Chargers to win. It's just not really been fun around either of these teams right now. In either way. But I'm taking the Chargers to win, and we're moving on to a big game in Oakland. This is a really, really big game, because you got the 7-5 Tennessee Titans, who have won 3 straight, feeling really great about their chances right now, going to Oakland to take on the 6-6 Raiders, who have lost 2 straight, and feel like they went from a frisky playoff contender to a dead-in-the-water team in a matter of weeks. Let me preface this by saying this is an absolute must-win for the Oakland Raiders for any hope of keeping their season alive. And let's look at these last couple weeks, because Oakland has gone stale. They're averaging scoring 9.6 points per game on offense these last 3 weeks. 9.6. That is not just bad. That's not just really bad. That is downright terrible and atrocious. 9.6 points per game on offense these last 3 games. You know what they're averaging giving up on defense these last 3 games? 28 points per game. That would rank them as one of the worst scoring defenses in the entire league. So they're not just getting beat. They're not just getting mollywopped. They're getting blown out these last 3 games. You know, if you had watched these last 3 games, you would not be able to tell that the Raiders were a team that was sitting in great position, not just in the wild card, but their division, because they just don't act like they care. They've gone stale. They've gone limp. And I really don't know what the problem is. They just feel lost, for lack of a better word. But on the opposite side of the field, you know, the Titans they're not white hot. They're like red hot. They're good right now, but you know, they're not setting the world on fire, but they're very warm. They're red hot. They're not white hot, they're red hot. Titans are dangerous right now, you know. With Derrick Henry becoming a different kind of player in the second half of the season, Ryan Tannehill showing that he can rush for a couple touchdowns and throw for a couple touchdowns. And that defense and special teams being absolute game changers. Just ask the Colts. You know, the Titans are showing that they can beat you in multiple ways. That, all right, fine, you want to get low scoring and gritty? We can do that. You want to get high flying and high scoring? They can do that too. You know, ever since Tannehill took over, I think they've had 2 or 3 games where they've scored 30 or more points. That was unthinkable when Mariota was in there, but with Tannehill, it just feels natural. It really does. But there is an Achilles heel for this Titans team that is still a problem. We talked about it on Tuesday. It's their offensive line. It's still one of the worst in the league. They gave up 6 sacks last week. So, the only hope for Oakland right now, you got to get after Ryan Tannehill. You got to get after him and sack him. That's your only hope right now. So maybe Max Crosby, their rookie defensive end from the University of Eastern Michigan, maybe he has a big game. Who knows? Cleveland Farrell from Clemson, you know, he could come in and have a big game too. What I'm saying is, get after Tannehill. Force some bad throws. You know, during this run that the Titans have been on, Tannehill really hasn't been turning the ball over too much. So at least, you know, get after him and try to force some bad throws. If I remember correctly, we forked Oakland on Tuesday. We put a fork in them and said they're done. They will officially be done if they don't win this game. This, like I said, this is a must-win for Oakland. And it had to be against the Titans team that is really feeling themselves and is really good right now. I'm taking Tennessee to win. I've fallen in love with the Titans lately. I like what they're doing. And Oakland just feels dead in the water. Give me the Titans to finally put an end to the Raiders season. And we're moving on to one of the bigger games of the weekend and probably the game that everybody's going to be watching in the late afternoon window. You got the 8-4 Kansas City Chiefs, who have won 2 straight, going to New England to take on the 10-2 Patriots. Oh boy, here we go. So, if you remember correctly, these two teams played each other twice last year, and both times were instant classics. And the Patriots won both times. So there's that. And now you fast forward a year, and neither team is really like they were last year. They just aren't. You know, the Chiefs' offense is still good, but not as great as it was last year. And the same can be said for New England to a certain extent. You know, their offense isn't even close to good as it was last year, but their defense is a lot better. But in my opinion, this is a show-me game for New England. You need to show me something. Just like with the Vikings earlier. I said the Vikings defense needs to show me something. The New England offense needs to show me something in this game. They do. Show me you're as good as your record says you are. Your record says you're 10-2, so that makes you one of the best teams in the NFL. You sure haven't played like it. In all brutal honesty. So before we dive into New England, let's talk about the Chiefs for a second. Like I said a second ago, their offense isn't as good as it was last year, but it's still solid and good. They're number 4 in total offense, averaging 384.7 yards per game. And they're number 3 in points per game, scoring 29 points per game on offense. So that's really, really good. And so speaking to the Pats offense that I said need to show me something, if you remember correctly, last week they were shut out in Houston. They only got back into it because Houston took their foot off the gas. You had wide receivers couldn't get open. There was miscommunication everywhere. It was just a really bad day for the New England offense. That feels like it's been going on all year long. So you got to wonder, will we see more of that in this game? Because the Pats' offense just isn't good. Let's call a spade a spade. Their offense isn't good. They have no running game, so the pressure is basically all on Tom Brady. And his receivers aren't getting open, and they're either dropping passes or they're running the wrong routes, and there's a ton of miscommunication. None of it is working right now for New England. At least their defense is still good. They have the number one scoring defense, averaging giving up 12.1 points per game. But they had a good defense last year. It wasn't as good as this, but they had a good defense last year. And the Chiefs were the one team that, went to New England and just scored a bunch of points on this team. So the Chiefs know they can do it. They did it last year twice, that they scored up and down on this team twice last year, so they know they can do it again if need be. You know what I'm saying? But to New England, in my opinion, they have to do more than just win a low-scoring defensive game, a sloppy contest in the weather in New England. In my opinion, they have to do more than that. That offense really has to show me something. Show me that if in need be, you can put up some points. Because right now, I don't think they can. I really don't think they can. They have to do more than just win. They got to show me. And you know what? I've said it on this podcast multiple times that New England is one of those teams that you never pick against. They're just like Alabama in college football. You never bet against Belichick. I'm taking the Chiefs to win. I just don't feel good about the Patriots at all. And maybe this is the game we've all been waiting for, where the Patriots finally shut up all the doubters, all the haters, like they always say, and look like the Super Bowl champions that we all thought we were going to get from them for like the fourth year in a row. Maybe this is finally that game. Or maybe Tom Brady goes out there, barely throws for 200 yards, 2 interceptions, and they get beat by like double digits by Kansas City in New England. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. That New England offense has played that badly this year. Once again, I'm calling for the Kansas City-sized upset. And we're moving on to the last of our late afternoon games. You got maybe an interesting one. You got the 7-5 Steelers, who have won 2 straight, going to Arizona to take on the 3-8-1 Cardinals, who have lost 5 straight. The Steelers have one of the better defenses in the league, number 5 on total D, averaging giving up 309.3 yards per game, and averaging giving up 18.8 points per game. That's 6th best in the league. I'm of the firm opinion that the Steelers have a top 3 defense. It's up there with the Patriots and 49ers as one of the league's best and brightest. But here's a very interesting stat for you. Kyler Murray, Cardinals quarterback, is the most sacked quarterback right now in the league through week 14. He's been sacked 41 times this season. 41. The Steelers' defense has racked up 43 sacks this season. That's 3rd best. So it might be a very long day at the office for Mr. Kyler Murray. And I said this game was interesting because we don't know what we're going to get with the Cardinals. Are we going to get that awful performance out of them again like we got last week, or are we going to see the team we saw right before their bye week that looked frisky and scoring and looked competent and looked good? What version of the Cardinals are we going to get? Speaking of the Steelers offense, Devlin Duck Hodges is once again going to start this week. It feels like he's going to get like a week-to-week tryout to be the starting quarterback. Uh, and you know what? He shouldn't have a problem against this terrible Cardinals defense that is just, one of the worst, especially against the pass. Especially with his center, Marquise Pouncey, now coming back from suspension. Get a little bit more protection on that O-line. Hopefully keep Chandler Jones at bay on that Cardinals defense. This should be a simple Steelers win. I say simple, but it's probably going to be sloppy. It's probably going to be close and low scoring, like all Steelers games have been this season. But I once again feel they'll find a way to win, just like they've done the entire season long. Mike Tomlin is making a serious run at Coach of the Year, in my opinion. He has just been doing an incredible job with, subpar talent and injuries abound. They're not going to have Juju Smith-Schuster. They're not going to have James Conner. Any other team that doesn't have their number one wide receiver and number one running back, that's almost a guaranteed loss. But with the Steelers, I have no doubt they'll win. That just goes to show you how great of a coaching job Mike Tomlin has done this year. Once again, I think the Steelers win, and we're moving on to Sunday Night Football. A really good one on Sunday Night Football, in my opinion. Because you got the 10-2 Seahawks, who are currently the second seed in the playoffs, and have won 5 straight, going to the Rams of Los Angeles. The 7-5 Rams, who are kind of back from the dead, maybe? So, here's an interesting subplot. Todd Gurley looked really great against Arizona. Got a lot of touches, looked like his old self out there. So, reporters asked Sean McVay at a press conference, the Rams head coach, this week. What's the deal with Todd Gurley? Is he healthy? What's been going on this season? Because it's been talked about the death this season, what's been going on with Todd Gurley. And Sean McVay had a weird comment. He just said, that's on me. I've just been an idiot, not playing him enough. So, my question is, has Todd Gurley really been fine this whole time? And it's just been Sean McVay not using him properly? Has that really what's been happening? I guess we're going to find out in this game, won't we? Man, what a turnaround that would be. After all the second guessing we've done all season long on Todd Gurley, that he just turns around and shows out for an incredible December, an incredible 4-week stretch where he looks like the old Todd Gurley. That would be crazy. So keep an eye on that, in my opinion. Watch Todd Gurley, see if he gets a heavy workload this week. I think that's worth keeping an eye on. But the Rams are going to need Todd Gurley in this game. They're going to need him a lot because they're going to have to put up points, in my opinion. Because Seattle's offense is good. It's been in the top 5 for basically the entire season. They can score in bunches. They can score deep balls. They can, ground it out and run the ball a lot. You name it, Seattle can do it offensively. Because Russell Wilson is a daggum magician. He can just pull a rabbit out of the hat. I mean, you watch the game Monday night. Here's a 60-yard touchdown to David Moore. Here's a rushing touchdown to Chris Carson. They can do it all. The Seahawks can. The Seahawks are coming off that big one Monday night, and the Rams are coming off that game against Arizona where they look like their old selves. They look like, the Rams of old that could, put up points with anybody. And if they have turned a corner and finally unlocked and flipped the switch, look out. This game could be very important for the NFC West. Last time these two teams played, it was that thrilling Thursday night football game weeks ago. That Seattle won on a last-second field goal where, the Rams had one of their better offensive performances, in my opinion, this year. And they did that in Seattle. So I think that shows you that, the Rams can, in theory, put up points on this defense. This defense isn't great by any metric, but it's good. It's solid. Not great, but good. This Rams offense is going to have to find a way to put up points, but I'm going to take Seattle to win this one. A tight game on Sunday Night Football, but don't be stunned if it's still a tight, close game late in the fourth quarter. As much as I just talked about, the Rams may be turning a corner, at this point in the season, they're still in the hunt for the wild card. They got kind of a tough schedule coming up. at this point for the Rams, it doesn't matter if it's ugly or not. Just find a way to win. That's my advice to the Rams. Just find a way to win. That's all that should matter to them right now. Once again, I'm taking Seattle to win that one. And we're moving on to the last game on our schedule. Monday Night Football. Oh, this is going to be so bad. Here's why it's going to be bad. Because you got the 10-2 Giants, who have lost 8 straight, going to Philadelphia to take on the 5-7 Eagles, who have lost 3 straight. People need to stop giving the NFC East primetime games because this is what happens. We are forced to watch garbage for 3 hours on Monday night. So, this game got interesting, though, on Tuesday because it was announced that Daniel Jones has apparently hurt his ankle. The Giants starting quarterback has apparently hurt his ankle. He's in a walking boot, and head coach Pat Shurmur says it is very unlikely that Daniel Jones will play Monday night. So for all intents and purposes, Daniel Jones is officially out. That means Eli Manning, who has been benched since week 3 or week 4, is now back. He is in the starting lineup, and oh my gosh, this is the most NFC East thing ever. So, this should be a slam dunk easy win for the Eagles. You got Eli Manning coming back in, a statue of a quarterback, which means he doesn't move, he doesn't escape pressure. If you get a guy in the backfield, Eli Manning is almost a guarantee to go down. This feels like a slam dunk easy win for the Eagles. So why do I feel like Eli Manning is coming off the bench to break the hearts of every Philadelphia Eagle one more time? That would be the greatest thing this season. In all honesty, that would be the funniest thing this season. That the 2-win Giants send Daniel Jones to the bench because of injury. In comes Eli Manning, who has a career record of 500, which means he has the same number of wins as he does losses, comes back in and eliminates the Eagles from playoff contention. That would be the greatest thing ever. The Eagles have been, a sloppy mess on offense this entire season. They're either dropping passes or they're not starting on offense at all. They're starting from behind. They're shooting themselves in the foot. It's just been a gigantic cluster of things going wrong on top of each other for the Philadelphia Eagles. This Giants defense is terrible. It's one of the worst, but the Eagles have shown that they can still struggle against bad defenses. So I want to say the Eagles should come out and win this, but I really don't know if they can. The NFC East is so bad. Here's my declaration for this one. If Philadelphia loses, their season is over. And I mean it this time. I know I said that if they lost to Miami, their season was over. I didn't think they would lose to Miami. I think they could seriously lose Monday night. I really, really do. I don't know why. I just do. If they do lose to the 2-win Giants, we can officially say the Eagles season is over. I really believe that. I'm taking Philly to win. I don't feel confident about that, though. It just feels like I'm really starting to think that the team that wins the NFC East, and I say win loosely, if you can see me right now, you would see that I'm doing air quotes around the word win. I really think that team could be like 8-8 or 7-9. I think that's a more realistic possibility than a team winning it at 9-7. Because the Cowboys are bad, the Eagles are terrible, and for crying out loud, the Washington football team is still alive in this divisional hunt. I'm taking Philly to win. I don't feel good about it. Let's all sit here and laugh at a dumpster fire on Monday Night Football. Sound good to you? Sound great to me. All right. That's it for today's show. We just previewed all the games of Week 14. So the next time we talk, it will be Tuesday, where we will recap all the games we just previewed. And if I remember correctly, we will preview the very last Thursday Night Football game of the year. If I remember correctly, this coming Thursday night football game between the Jets and Ravens is the last one of the year. So there you go. We'll do that Thursday. All right. So thanks for coming by and listening, and I'll see everybody Tuesday. Bye.